Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features the Uncanny X-Men number 274, cover dated March 1991. The cover is by Jim Lee, inked by Scott Williams. By now it is an iconic cover. Very recently a facsimile edition of this was published by Marvel. It is a cover that is not incredibly inventive in terms of the design. I mean, like, what we have is we've got four posing characters, but it really works so very well, and it's one of Jim Lee's strongest from his run on Uncanny X-Men. Great level of detail in the hatching of the various characters and figures on the cover. Really majestic looking Magneto there, like the hatching in the folds of his cloak as well. Ka-Zar looks formidable. Nick Fury looks like he's having a little bit of fun there, blowing those smoke rings. And Rogue has pretty much never looked better than in this pose here. A really great command of super heroic anatomy on display on this particular cover. One little colouring error, which is, can you see it? Rose got blue eyes instead of green. Now let's open this one up to the first page. So we've got 22 pages of story in this issue. The first page really is a setting the scene and getting us into the thick of what's been going on in the Savage Land. So we've got Trish Tilby making a news report on these mysterious towers that have been making their appearance in the Antarctic. And also there has been a disaster in Argentina connected with what's been going on in the Savage Land. And what has been decided is the president responded to the Argentinian request for aid by voicing American support for any United Nations action. In New York, the Security Council of the UN voted to authorize Colonel Nicholas Fury and SHIELD to investigate the mysterious polar towers, and should they be determined to be a threat, take whatever action he deems appropriate. So there you go. So we're into the story now, but great detail, very fine detail in the artwork here by Jim Lee. In particular, I like that upshot on the SHIELD helicarrier, an interesting angle to take on that well-known craft in the Marvel Universe. And we get our declaration, our trumpets blaring here, a tale of pride and power featuring Magneto, the master of magnetism. Let's turn the page for a famous double page spread, and the title of the story in particular, Crossroads. So the creative team down here, Chris Claremont script, Jim Lee plot and pencil. So this is interesting, Jim Lee getting a plotting credit here. So the baton of creative control is beginning to change hands from Claremont to Jim Lee. Lee proving so successful in terms of pumping up the sales on the comic, and Bob Harris as editor taking Lee's side over Claremont's. Scott Williams on inks, Pat Brousseau letters, so Tom Orzechowski not on board for this one, and Joe Rosas on colours, Glynis Oliver not present either. So a really nice shot of our trio here, plus Zabu. So we've got Magneto, Rogue, and Ka-Zar. Last time that we saw Magneto and Rogue was in issue 269 of the title. Really, really great down shot here of Magneto and the other two surveying the wreckage of that UN team. All the helicopters wrecked there on the ground. And really, throughout this issue, readers are made privy to Magneto's inner monologue, and they're always displayed with this green color for the narrative captions, his first-person narration throughout. So while Lee is doing one thing with the artwork, and it looks tremendous, it looks grand, it's amazing, Claremont is taking time to develop and reveal to readers the inner thoughts of Magneto, who otherwise isn't saying anything in this particular panel here. So I'm not going to read out every single one of his inner person monologue captions, but it is a really, really nice setup with this first, a number of them, so I'm going to go through it. All my life I've been drawn to the wild and desolate places of the world. he says to himself. As a boy, I saw myself walking where no man ever had, alone against the elements. The more I came to know of people, the more strongly that yearning dream spoke to me, as though the fierce, unyielding emptiness without struck some resonant echo within my heart and soul. Yet for all of that, for all of life replete with its share, and far more, of rage and pain and suffering, as harshly given as endured, still I managed to find myself with allies who appeared determined to stand by me, regardless. I wonder which are the greater fools, they for trying and trusting, or me for allowing it. So really great diction, a great poetic flow and rhythm to Magneto's inner monologue, and really setting up the grandeur of Magneto as a character, his depth as a character, and there are going to be many callbacks to key events in Magneto's life history, going all the way back to the Roy Thomas and Neil Adams run, but also Claremont's major interventions and developments of Magneto's character over the course of his coming on 16-year run on Uncanny X-Men and associated titles. Just something that I saw looking at this double page spread again here. It's always intriguing in terms of the little details you catch for the first time looking at art like this. It's that body down there. There's a corpse burning in the conflagration in the valley below the trio here. You can just see it there. I never noted that before. So there's debate here about whether there had been an opportunity to, there was no opportunity to warn the SHIELD and the UN team. And Magneto here says, Zaladane has effectively inhibited all radio and telecommunications links with the outside world, Rogue. And the Savage Land itself suffers under a perpetual electromagnetic pulse effect that neutralizes all forms of higher order electronics. As far as we're concerned, the modern age of technology no longer exists. And Ka-Zar says to that, I think I liked the lady better when she was just the nutso leader of a nutso barbarian cult, Magneto. Life has changed, Ka-Zar. Like it or not, either we adapt or we perish. So we get Magneto's tough life philosophy emerging there. And as they're walking down to inspect the wreckage of the helicopters, what happens is they're attacked by Zaladane's soldiers on riding these particular dinosaurs. And Magneto instantly orders Rogue to stand behind him for her protection because she has lost her mutant powers. She no longer has the powers of Carol Danvers of super strength and invulnerability, but she has not made peace with that fact. Blast it, Magneto, let me help, she exclaims. And Ka-Zar says, you're in no condition to, so do as the nice master of magnetism says, okay. And Ka-Zar starts attacking the dinosaur there. And then Amphibious, a blast from Magneto's past, attacks him. And no doing so badly so far, Hot Blood. Greetings, O Creator, remember me. And that is a big, deep callback to X-Men 62, Uncanny X-Men 62 by Roy Thomas and Neil Adams. Magneto responds and says, do you truly believe your physical abilities to be a match for one who but with a thought can draw sufficient ferrous metals from the soil below us to form an impenetrable protective shield? And then I like this from Claremont because, of course, that's classic expository dialogue where Magneto's explaining for new readers what he's doing. But I like the narrative caption, the first person monologue Claremont gives to follow on from that. So easily said, and I'm thankful my helmet keeps both friend and foe from seeing how dearly even the small effort cost me. So this is a weakened Magneto, which of course makes it interesting in terms of the threats that he's facing. So the fight continues here. We've got Barbarous and Whiteout combining against Ka-Zar. So Ka-Zar is blinded by Whiteout's powers, and then Barbarous makes ready to spear Ka-Zar in the back. Rogue jumps in and acts on instinct, it would seem. So she makes flesh-to-flesh contact with Barbarous, and she's expecting to absorb his memory and knock him unconscious, his psyche and memory, and knock him unconscious. Like me, Rogue is a mutant, says Magneto in his first person narration. Hers being the power to temporarily drain those she touches of mind and memory, absorbing any and all of their abilities in the process. Under normal circumstances, the process renders her victims instantly unconscious. But turn the page and we'll see that hasn't worked on Barbarous, because her powers aren't working at all. He moves in for a second kiss and Magneto intervenes. I hear my daughter Anya scream as she burns before my eyes. Hear Isabel's gasp of surprise as she is murdered. Two I loved but were unable to save, only avenge. It will not be that way with Rogue. And what this puts me into question is, Jim Lee's got the plot credit and Claremont the script. So I'm wondering whether Jim Lee had any notion that Claremont was going to script this in a way that called all the way back to classic X-Men number 12, the backup story by Claremont and John Bolton, Fire in the Night, which precisely told us for the first time the backstory of Magneto's escape from Auschwitz with his wife Magda, then the birth of their daughter Anya, and her being lost in a house fire in the Ukraine, of all places. So here in the present, Magneto has already wrapped up all of the mutates and Zaladane's soldiers, and now it looks like he's going to strangle Barbarous with his own neck collar. Kill me, challenges Barbarous. What are you waiting for? That was your rule, wasn't it, O high and mighty master? Defiance means death, but mark me, old man, whatever happens to us, your day is done. The power, the future, belong to Zaladane. Magneto responds, I'm not impressed. And Whiteout, who is Barbarous's lover, says that she'll tell Magneto whatever he wants to know, his life, Magneto, for all I know, if it has commensurate value, responds Magneto. So she gives the information about Zaladane's plan to move against the Citadel the next day. Magneto responds coldly, hardly a revelation, woman. We've been expecting such an attack for quite a while. And Rogue intervenes and says, you said you'd let them go. And he responds, if her information was worth the price, it is not. So Rogue insists that would be murder, no less than they had planned for us, Rogue. That makes it right, she follows up. We're the good guys, right? We're supposed to stand for something better. So it appears to move him, her plea on behalf of her attacker. And he says to himself, she actually believes that. Why can't I? All I see is blood, that already spilled, that yet to be. I see my path so clearly, but I turn away. So Magneto uses his power to burrow deep into the caves beneath the ground they were standing on. And he says to the mutates and Zaladane's soldiers, there is sustenance in these caverns. Given skill, effort and luck, you should survive. Indeed, you might even someday regain the surface, but they're going to be out of the coming fight. And then time passes. Later in my citadel, I reflect that ages ago, in what for me was another lifetime, I used my knowledge of genetics to mutate a band of swamp savages into superpowered beings. So that is precisely X-Men, Uncanny X-Men 62 that I mentioned earlier. When they were no longer useful, I abandoned them to their fate, forgot their very existence. More of my past come back to haunt my present and threaten the future. So he's there investigating Zaladane's towers. We get a nice colour hole there in Jim Lee's art. And great quiet scene with Magneto thinking and ruminating on his past, present and the coming future. And thinking about Zaladane as his antagonist. Thinking to himself, my life's ambition has been to safeguard my fellow mutants. Zaladane has no such compunction. And I hear the echo of Der Fuhrer's voice in the radio of memory, smell the awful stench of the sick and dying as the cattle cars brought the condemned to Auschwitz. I wear red, the colour of blood, in tribute to their lost lives. And the harder I try to cast it aside to find a gentler path, the more irresistibly I'm drawn back. I should have died myself with those I loved. Instead, I carted the bodies by the hundreds, by the thousands, from the death house to the crematorium and the ashes to the burial ground, asking now what I could not then, why was I spared? So, the people who were tasked with doing what Magneto talks about there in his first person monologue were Sonderkommando, and these were Jews who were used by the Nazis to do all of these dirty jobs. And that was Nazi policy, that the Germans themselves wouldn't dirty their own hands and instead had the Jews do all of this horrible, horrific work. So really, really somber stuff, and Claremont leaning in to what he began in respect of Magneto's characterization all the way back in Uncanny X-Men 150 here, and the revelation of Magneto's time in Auschwitz. So a really serious backdrop to what's going on at the surface level of Jim Lee's art. You know, this little action adventure story in the Savage Land, this coming battle between Magneto, Ka-Zar and Rogue and their team, and Zaladane over here riding into battle the next day on a big Tyrannosaurus Rex. Really great anchor image here by Claremont, or not Claremont, but by Jim Lee. So Magneto thinking about Rogue as well. She lives but only as a shadow of her former self. She tires too easily, as do I. There will be no quarter when Zaladane and I finally meet. That is her style, as much as it was once mine. And he thinks to himself all the way back to the very beginning, X-Men number 1, Uncanny X-Men number 1. Was this how the X-Men felt in the days when they rose to combat me? Did I approach those battles with the same overbearing arrogance I sense in Zaladane? The utter contempt she feels for those who serve her? The more I come to know of her, the more I find myself trapped in a mirror, staring at a distorted vision of myself. And again, I'm just wondering, did Jim Lee expect different scripting of these pages he handed in? Did he expect there to be speech balloons from Rogue and Ka-Zar, speech balloons to Zaladane here and her mutates? Was he surprised to see that Claremont cover this page with first-person monologue by Magneto? Would be interesting to learn that. And Magneto decides to get some sleep before the battle in the next morning, and he says to himself it's a mistake because of the nightmares that come along. Flowers, scent of growing things, joyful sounds of life, so clear, so crisp after more than half a century. Someone sobs. My sister holds tight my hand. My father still cannot believe this is happening. I hear laughter, the guns blaze, and I'm falling with the others into darkness, loamy earth, smell tainted by the acrid burning of lime. All of us pressed so tight together, embracing eternity. So easy to give up, lie in my grave, breathe my last, but I fight. And just at that moment he wakes up as Rogue's hand is about to touch, gloved hand is about to touch him. So even though he's asleep, he's alert to any coming threats. And that's a nice callback to Uncanny X-Men 150 as well, where Storm snuck up on Magneto and debated about whether killing him with a knife, cutting his throat or not, which in the end she didn't do. And so we have a little replay of that for very long time readers who might get the echo of Uncanny X-Men 150. But it's Rogue, and it's because Ka-Zar sent her. It's almost showtime. It's dawn. Magneto, you're hurting me, she says. She sounds surprised, as well she should. She's supposed to be well nigh invulnerable. Clearly, Magneto says, something went wrong when I reintegrated your biomatrix. And there's a moment happening between them. Am I imagining the sudden spark between us, leaving Rogue as shaken as I? Leave well enough alone, he says to himself. I'm pledged to another, as much as one can pledge a heart full of ghosts. And that's his Magda. It is perhaps for the best. that he has when Ka-Zar comes in to ruin the tender moment. So Magneto starts issuing orders. I will take Zaladane's measure. Her troops, Ka-Zar, I leave to you. And Ka-Zar leaves Shanna, his wife, and the kids to Rogue. They're her responsibility, but Rogue insists the heck they are. For once, girl, do as you're told, responds Magneto, or have you no conception of the value of what Ka-Zar entrusts to your care, any more than of your own worth? To we who may be about to die. Really, really poetically expressed there. Excellent cadence to the rhythm of the language here in Claremont's script. And also interesting in the art as well to see Magneto pulling from the elements around him his costume and the helmet and putting it on, getting ready for battle. I cannot recall a point in my life when I did not fight, he thinks to himself. And here we go. Again, was Jim Lee expecting speech balloons here between Brainchild and Zaladane regarding the battle and its progress? Well, he didn't get it. Instead, he got Magneto's first-person narration continuing over the visuals. Nor any longer of a time when war held the slightest horror for me. Some of Zaladane's force follow her of their free choice, but most are under the slave or influence of a creature called Worm, this guy here, who coats his victims with a transparent mucus that renders them wholly obedient to his every command. I wish I knew a way to defeat her that would spare these innocents. I tell myself this is for the best, sparing them the torment of living with the memories of the atrocities they were forced to commit. Whatever else, as I open fissures to the local lava field, I make sure their end comes as quickly and without pain as possible. I should be so fortunate because he's attacked from behind by Zaladane. So we see their battle here and it's short, and he's knocked by Zaladane towards the canopy of the jungle forest below, and she exults in her victory. She says, to coin a phrase, old man, this land, I dare say this entire world isn't big enough for the both of us. How gentlemanly of you to exit the stage. And then she declares in real Silver Age villain fashion, like echoing in many ways the Magneto of the Silver Age, hear me servitors and foes both. Magneto is no more. Zaladane rules supreme. So Magneto has been knocked to the ground, but is he dead? Is he defeated? Meanwhile, the battle continues, but it's not going well. Ka-Zar says to Rogue, we can't hold. There in the background, you see Shanna, Ka-Zar's wife. Every time they grab one of our people, Worm turns them into a slave. Head for the deep jungle to regroup. So they're not going to be able to hold the Citadel. They're attacked here. This is a great panel of these pterosaurs with Zaladane's troops riding them. And great top-down angle on Ka-Zar, Rogue, Zabu there as well. There's Shanna too. And so, yeah, we have a big fight. But I have always wondered whether Scott Williams is inking these panels on the bottom half of the page. And my guess is that he's not. Indeed, maybe not even the top panels, but certainly these two. And this one in particular. Just look at the way the arm hairs are rendered there on Zaladane's soldier, not the way that Scott Williams does arm hair, which you can see over here on Raza, that fine line for the arm hairs. So my thoughts are that someone else is inking these two panels in particular at the bottom of the page than Scott Williams. So again, there must have been a little bit of a deadline pressure on this one because Uncanny X-Men 275 is double-sized. So to get everything to the printer on a monthly basis, maybe there's a bigger team of inkers involved than just Scott Williams himself on this particular issue. So Raza gets the better of Ka-Zar, tells him to give it up. I may be blind, Ka-Zar, but my other senses more than make up for the lack. I know precisely where you are and how best to hit you so that it hurts the most. And Lupus gets his claws around Rogue's neck as well. Now, I've always thought that it was an unfortunate kind of visual echo or mirror image from this panel here to this one here, it's in effect he's drawing the same thing at more or less the same angle. Jim Lee would have been better to vary that, flip the image to the other side maybe, just to keep the variation across the 2 pages. But a minor criticism. So Rogue's power still not working. Brainchild here salivating over the prospect of what he might be able to do with Rogue, because of the fact that he can touch her bare flesh. Let's not continue with that line of thinking any further. And just in the nick of time, just as Rogue was rescued earlier by Magneto, she gets rescued here by Nick Fury's arrival. So not everybody went down with those helicopters that were viewed burning at the beginning of the issue. And Fury here is working with a Soviet colonel, or general even, Semyanov. Fan your paratroopers out to the left. I want prisoners, says Fury. So the mutates run, and Fury gives Rogue a hand up. Well, look who ain't dead, he says to her. Funny, I was just thinking pretty much the same about you. So of course, Rogue, believed to have died in Dallas with the other X-Men back in Uncanny X-Men 227. So this is the first time that Fury's gotten, how shall I put it, has learned that she's not dead. Been a while, Colonel Fury, she says, thanks for the rescue. But I've always wondered about that, because when have Rogue and Colonel Fury met in the past? So there are 1 or 2 subscribers who might have the answer to that one. But what I'm thinking of is whether this is a little nod to the fact that even though Carol Danvers has been separated psychically from Rogue, she still can remember Carol Danvers' memories, key ones, including all the times that Carol worked with Nick Fury in the past. That's my little conjecture there. So she thanks Fury for the rescue, and he says, what I'm paid for, sweetheart. Better assume some of those clucks got away and head on back to our hideout. So let's see where they're hiding out. So a nice top-down shot here of Fury and Semyonov, and they've got a little map of the Savage Land there, a little fire going, and Fury catches Rogue and Ka-Zar up to speed in terms of what happened with the UN team. Zaladane caught us cold. A localized electromagnetic pulse fried most of our electronics, left our ships wide open to the wild weather she whipped up, and her pterosaur air cavalry. Ain't seen a helicopter yet can survive a direct hit from a 1,000-pound rock. So that's how those helicopters were taken out earlier. We took casualties, he says, but we're a long way from out of commission. No sign of Magneto since Zal shot him down in flames. She's claiming he's dead. Assuming that's right, she represents more power than we can handle. So Semyonov is wondering whether Fury is advocating a withdrawal. And Fury asks Semyonov for what his suggestion would be. And he says, we've functional vehicles and the best soldiers on the planet. Yet you wish us to, to flee with our tail between our legs. So Fury comes back and says, good as we are, we're no match for Zaladane. This is a job for the Avengers. So that really makes sense. Yeah, it is a job for the Avengers. Sick Thor on Zaladane. And Fury continues, and our primary mission now has become getting home to let him know what's happening, because there's no telecommunications out of the Savage Land at the moment. So Magneto makes his surprise appearance, and Semyonov orders that he be seized. Rogue intervenes, and now it's revealed that Magneto was casting a holographic projection of himself in order to ascertain what his welcome might be at the UN camp. He says, under the circumstances, a necessary deception to determine if it was safe enough to show myself. So let's continue here and see what Semyonov has to say, or what is revealed here, when he says, my son was a lieutenant aboard the submarine Leningrad. So that is an unexpected blast from the past from Magneto, and he thinks, again, a cry from the past, one father to another, in anguished grief for a slain child. At the time, my actions seemed quite appropriate. The Leningrad had fired a salvo of nuclear ballistic missiles at me, so I sank her with all hands. And that is the story in Uncanny X-Men 150, all the way back in 1981. Magneto continues, thinking of that crew not as people, but merely an object lesson. How dare they defy me, threaten me, these Russians whose countrymen let my daughter burn to death. He's talking about what happened in Ukraine. There is too much history and hate between us. I cannot talk to these men. So Claremont really building into this jungle adventure all of these deep callbacks to Magneto's history, but most particularly the history he developed for Magneto, the backstory he developed in particular Uncanny X-Men 150 and the backup story to classic X-Men number 12, A Fire in the Night. So Magneto says aloud, "Never mind, Colonel, I've no business here. It was my mistake to come," and he's walking away. But Rogue comes after him and she insists, "You came for a reason. It doesn't matter. They won't listen. I'll make them," she says. "Zaladane's towers, they create a resonance field. They are placing her in sync with the Earth's magnetic field, allowing her to access its power directly. She will drain everyone dry, ultimately becoming one with the planet. The state and actions of her being having equivalent repercussions on our world," he says. "Nothing will be beyond her capability or her grasp unless she is stopped." So Rogue says to him, "Sounds like you're talking from personal experience, because that was one of Magneto's schemes in the past. Don't matter though, whatever's needed, that's what we'll do with these yo-yos or without them." So Rogue then makes a speech to Fury, Semyonov, and the UN team, and she persuades them to work with Magneto. I like this panel here. I like Jim Lee's choice to leave most of Ka-Zar in silhouette except for his loincloth, and also the details, the window details on the helicopters, the functioning helicopters back there. So now it's time to go, and Magneto thinks, "I should have kept walking, but there is but one way Zaladane can be dealt with, yet to do so may well cost me. Rogue trusts me, believes in me, Ka-Zar as well. Will they understand, or will they consider this my final ultimate betrayal?" So Ka-Zar knows something's up. He saw the look in Magneto's eye. "Something, mister?" asks Fury. "I'm not sure." In Magneto's eyes, a look. "Probably nothing. Whatever comes, we can count on him to do his part." And Fury responds, "You better be right, because we're staking our lives on it." And off they go. It's a really well orchestrated visual scene there by Jim Lee. The helicopters getting loaded up. Fury aboard. Ka-Zar the last one up. Zabu in there as well. Little white tuft of Rogue's hair there, as she's told she has to get into combat armor. And then the helicopters taking off as well. Transport helicopters. Really well done. An interesting little technique here in the art as well by Scott Williams, where he is using some kind of tissue or sponge here to lay down ink for the foliage of the jungle trees there as well. And then the scene shifts once again back to the end of the previous issue, and Lila Cheney, when she turned up at the ruins of the X-Mansion and teleported the X-Men to someplace else, leaving Guido behind, and Scott and Jean just arriving in time for Guido to explain, "Had a hot flash from your old prof, call for help, major league trouble. Lila's teleported them to him to the rescue, but she's taken by surprise by where she teleports to. Where the heck is this?" So Wolverine's not pleased. "You shanghaied us here, Cheney, don't you know?" And we see these bones here on the ground as well. The X-Men in the uniforms redesigned by Jim Lee, but Storm remains in her own costume, her own distinctive costume. And at this point, Wolverine's popped his claws. Jubilee holding him back, and Storm saying, "You said you would take us to Professor X, Lila. Where is he?" Meanwhile, Forge is investigating the environment they find themselves in, and it's organic matter that surrounds them. He says here, Lila says, "I was told all questions would be answered on arrival." And Forge says, "Don't much like the sound of that or the feel of this. An element of surface awareness and elasticity. No obvious way out save the way we came. No offense, Ms. Cheney, but how about you jaunt us someplace else?" But it's too late. So he's caught with that organic splatter. Gambit caught there as well. Let's continue. We see great anchor image here of the team basically doing their best against those tentacles reaching out for them. Wolvie cutting them up here. And I like this piece of dialogue that Claremont gives him as well. "No prob team. Critter exists, which means it can be cut. Have you all loose and this sucker hurting in the proverbial jiff, but it's no good. As fast as he cuts the tentacles, the wounds instantly close. So they're all imprisoned. And somebody arrives here in silhouette in the background. Your role has greatly changed since last we met. Jubilee, Gambit, Forge, Psylocke, Banshee, Storm, and Wolverine." So Storm instantly recognizes who it is. Wolverine too, it would appear. And let's see, who is it? Turn the page. Another seminal Jim Lee drawing. It's Deathbird. And a last scene in the Uncanny X-Men, all the way back in the Cockrum and Paul Smith era of the Brood saga. So she introduces herself. "I look forward most eagerly to facing you on the field of honor, either in single combat or against your entire team, but that happy day must yield precedence in the scheme of things to a small task I would have you perform. I wish you to slay Professor Charles Xavier." So the mystery is building. Lila came to Earth, teleported to Earth in order to get a rescue team of X-Men together, and yet she turned up in a location she wasn't expecting. Deathbird is there. She's saying she wants them to slay Professor Charles Xavier. Was it all a trap? Well, we're going to have to read the next issue in order to discover the fates of Magneto and Professor X, the path not taken. And again, look, also here, Scott Williams using a little screen tone for the organic matter walls around Deathbird there. Really, really good stuff. Letters page, a couple of letters about issue 269, and also, what's the other issue there? 268 as well. We've got a statement of ownership with the print run number here. So the average number of copies printed in the preceding 12 months, 602,000. So that'll give you an idea of the numbers the title was selling more or less in this particular era. I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on Uncanny X-Men 274. Let me know your thoughts on this issue in the comment section to the video. If you enjoyed my review, please like the video on YouTube and consider sharing it. It really does help the channel. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.